Okay, hello everybody. This is the first time that I have set up the microphone and OBS and Ableton project to show you how I made one of my tracks. So for this video, it's going to be my track Scent, which came out on Future Sound of Egypt, my first ever release of 2022, and it's probably one of my biggest tracks ever, certainly is a personal favorite of mine. There's been a lot of positive comments talking about the track. It was played by Ali and Fila since last October, I think, Transmission Festival and Up Until Close in Amsterdam, Luminosity, loads of different places. But anyway, yeah, I'm really pleased with the track, and thank you to everybody who's been supporting it so far. For this tutorial, I want it to be unfiltered. I want it to be unedited because I want to be as authentic as I can be in showing you the journey of the track, how it came to be, and each individual element that went into it. The track itself is quite simple. It's really focused on the main melody and the side pluck melody, which carry throughout the whole track. It's 140 BPM uplifting trance, and personally, to me, it is probably one of the most energetic tracks that I've ever done. It's certainly my favorite so far. So let's jump into it. So the story behind the track is that I was making loads of music, during lockdowns and during the situation in Thailand, early 2021. And just as a side note, I will say that the inspiration that comes to me when I'm producing music can be from anything. It can be from producing, it can be from making drum beats and then creating a great groove, and then that carries the rest of your decisions. Or it can also be you're not even in the studio, you're not even working, and you get a melody in your head. In the case of Scent, this is what happened for me. I was in the shower and I had this melody come into my head, and it was the main one, the main super soul melody. And I was like humming it to myself, and I was going round and round and round while I was in the shower. So as soon as I got out, I ran to Ableton and I just got that melody down, and then I bounced it to a clip and sent it to my friend, James Cottle. I said to him, listen to this and tell me what you think. And then he got back to me straight away and said like, this is good. And I was like, okay, I've got to do something with this. So honestly, when you're so inspired and when you're so in the zone, you can like crack out a track within 2-3 days. So basically, for the next few days after that melody, I really hammered at this and tried to get it finished as much as I could. So let's start by going through one by one of each layer, and I will tell you the story behind every decision that I made. So for this case, for this track, I used the Activa sample pack, Activa Trance Essentials 2, the kick from the Construction Kit number 6. So I ripped that and then I put it onto the sampler channel, which then goes into a kick and bass bus, which I'll talk about soon. And then that is also layered with a parallel compression of the kick and bass bus. But again, I'll go into that in a second. The kick is on a sampler, like I said, and one trick that I learned from James Diamond is that you want to try and keep the second eighth of every beat as free as you can from the bass frequencies of the kick. So I'll just play that to show you. So you can see that it's playing the sample, but it's not actually playing the whole beat. And you can check to see, using the LFO tool, you can check to see if you're falling into that second eighth. So if I turn this box on here for the waveform, this allows me to make sure that when I'm putting the MIDI in, that I'm not actually going over into this second eighth. Just a little trick there. And if you're thinking why, it's because when you have the sub playing on the offbeat, you don't really want them to compete with each other. You want there to be like there's no bleed. People like, I'm sure it was Deadmau5. Deadmau5 was saying about using your kick and your sub, the relationship between the kick and the sub. You want it to be that there is kind of like it might have been Steve Duda who said it, but anyway, like a sucking motion between when the kick comes out of the speaker in the club and then when the bass line follows it. And you want there to be space. You know, some of the most impactful tracks have space, whether it's the movement between kick and bass or whether it's the layering of the synths. To create space in the mix is something which can really create energy and drive in the club, which is what this track is designed for. So for the kick, I have it just with a low cut at 40 hertz. And then I have my automation for the transitions coming from the Auto Filters Ableton stock plugins. And I also have a utility on there because I use the utility for those transitions, like the big build-ups. On the sub, I have samples from the Activa Trance Essentials Pack Volume 1. And what I'm doing with that is I'm using the bassline samples and just putting them on the sampler and playing them on the offbeat. For that, I'm using a preset which is based on the James Diamond Sonic Academy tutorial, where he talks about elevating the bass frequencies of the tonic, in this case F sharp, and then decreasing the frequencies on the fifth and the above octave, and this creates a really warm sub. Again, I've paired that with utility in the filters to do my transitions, so you can hear them come together here. So you hear the relationship between the two. It's quite clean. It's not like there's much bleed between the two. They're bouncing off each other quite nice. It's a good relationship between the kick and the bass. And in order to ensure that there was going to be the right volume, the right levels in the mix, what I'm doing is I'm using the span, Voxengo span. And what I'm looking to do is, if I put this in high resolution mode, I'm looking to see the part where the point where the sub is matching on the low frequency here and the high frequency here. So I want it to be around here, where they come together like that, on the same level. And when the kick and bass are together, I want it to, maybe it's a bit too, down just a little bit more. I'm wanting it so that the low frequency of the kick is matching with the low frequency of the sub. So I'm not talking about decibels here. I'm talking about using your eyes on the frequency on the spectrum to make that decision. So then you know that if it looks good and it sounds good, then the odds are that it's going to be good, pretty much. Next, I have the mids So for the mids, I'm using a different approach to what I usually do. So when I'm using mids, I've been using about 4 to 6 different layers recently for my more signature sounding mid rollers. But for this track, I took a completely different approach and I went for using samples and one synth. So this first layer here is a Sylenth, and it's taken from the, let's have a look. Yeah, it's taken from the factory sound bank. And this one's just this ARP here. And the I'm using that on 16ths just as a held sustained note. So like this with the sidechain. And I chose this sound because I remember it was from like really old Paul van Dyk records from the early 2000s. They had that like driving 16th layer kind of like sitting in there. So I decided to do that. And then underneath I'm using samples from Activa sample pack. Which I then transpose using Ableton. I think it's complex mode. No, Pro. I'm using the transposing on those samples whenever the notes change. So altogether they come to create like a nice mesh of mids together. So all of the mids and all of the sub and all of the kick all comes to the kick and bass bus, which is doing a sort of gluing. Let's see why I've got this on here. Okay. It's doing a sort of gluing together of everything, adding a little bit of saturation with FabFilter. This is the same preset that I used on Soundglass, which is my collaboration with Renali. And then using the virtual mix rack, the virtual channel Brit N preset. So this here is, if you've seen the James Diamond tutorial for Sonic Academy, he talks about using the analog emulation plugins, which, you know, some people think of it as a bit of like snake oil, but really, you can hear the difference when you're working with music for a long time, and when you're listening to what happens when you use these plugins. They really do make a difference. In terms of this mix rack here, I'm using it for creating more warmth in the low end, and it really sounds nice. So let's play that together. And I'll show you with it off as well. So that's everything turned off, which you can hear. It's still quite nice, but it feels a bit hollow. So then as soon as I turn this on, it's using the saturation, and it's using the analog emulation. We're also using compression, 2 compressors, and this sort of EQ style. It kind of works like an equalizer and a compressor at the same time, I feel. It's very nice touch. So all of them together makes it sound fat. So after that, I will show you the percussion. So on the percussion, I wanted to keep it quite simple with the using stock samples. So I went for using the same Activa Trance Essentials for this one. So I've got a clap there, hi-hat, and I also use a ride later on. So all together they sound like this. and that's kind of like your elementary level. So what you have to do next is create some character. And I'm sick of seeing the same. Oh, sorry, I'm sick of hearing the same drum loops being used. So for this one, I decided to do a little bit of searching around, and I went for the Tidy Records sample pack, which is from Loop Masters, and it was probably a long time ago, maybe 10 years, and combined those together to create something which is a little bit more tasty. All together. Yeah. And that's it. That's creating the drive, and that's creating the energy. Looking at the way of the structure, when you introduce a trance track, some people like to cut it into just kick and bass here in the beginning. So let's say some people like to do that, and I actually do that myself, a lot of tracks. But for this one, I felt like I wanted that energy to really hit, you know, as soon as it happens. I wanted that feeling of, I have arrived, you know. Next, I have this channel here, which is called Subriff. This is actually using the, this is for the supporting the riff in the break section. So when you listen to it all together, I did that to support this channel, this group here, which is called the Fifths. So I use this to drive this fifth sound even harder. So throughout the entire track, this the Fifths is creating like a bouncing sensation, you know. You've got the pluck, and then you've got like this saw, which is on a phaser, and it just creates like this movement to basically to drive it to the breakdown, holding that F sharp. So when it comes to the break, it goes along with the chord sequence. I love that. Love it. And then all together. Yeah. And I also have this. Oh yeah, just to point out, the presets from these two are from Activa. I'm going to mention Activa a lot. Shout out to Activa. I have got the Activa presets for all three of these from the same sample pack as I'm using for the drums. And then also this sneaky chant here, which I'll show you. This here I feel is like, it adds a bit of a signature vibe, you know, like when trance fans will agree that sometimes it's easy to get a track mixed up with another track, especially at the beginning, because they just come in with the same kick and bass, you know, the same rolling bass lines. But if you introduce these little elements which can help you help the listener identify a track from another early on, then it just makes it much more excitable when you're listening to it to know, oh yeah, this track is coming in. So I've got this kind of tribal chant, which I took from Filterhead's sample pack, Unity Records, which is actually a techno sample pack, but it sounded great, just sounded really good with this. So it actually sounded like this. But I'm going to pitch it up. Gives like that authentic tribal techno-y, trancey, Filterheads vibe. I also have this pluck that's coming up underneath, which you don't really hear on the final version. On the mastered version, you don't really hear this that well, but it's there and it serves a purpose. Let's play the melodic elements together for this intro. Yeah, very nice. Okay. So next, I have the melody, the side pluck melody, which at the time I was not using any MIDI keyboards. I was actually on my old Mac for this project, and I didn't have any MIDI keyboards here in Thailand, and I had to play it in by the keyboard function on the Mac, where you can change the keyboard at the front to behave like a piano. So I was limited to, I think, 1.5 octaves, starting from a low B to a high E or something like that. And I just randomly played, and I think it was only like after 2 tries, I got it to sound the way that I wanted it to sound, which sounds like this. So that was it there, that bit there. This little baby here, which turns out to be one of my most catchy intro melodies. Yeah, very nice. Okay, so another thing I have is these acid stabs, which actually I've already used them in another track that I did called Addicted, which was out maybe 3 or 4 years ago on Ava. Except I used it on, obviously I've transposed it to the key of this track. What they do is they create this syncopated rhythm on top of the driving bass, which creates more groove when you're listening. I've got that there, and that's kind of just sitting underneath everything. So far, if I isolate these channels, which we've just been talking about, that's just sitting nice there in the background as a sort of texture and creating that groove. I will point out I forgot to mention about the parallel compression. So after I go from the kick and bass bus, I'm sending that on a separate channel here to the parallel. You see, looking at this is an old project. I'm seeing things that I didn't do. I should have been sending it to this parallel compression bus here, which is just sitting there nice in the back with a bit of compression from the SSL, and that's creating a click in the top end and a nice bit of warmth in the bottom. So I do that on everything. I do that on everything that I'm doing now, like this year, but back then I wasn't doing it. It goes to show that when you're producing music, everything is a learning process. You're better than you were last year, and you're better than you were 5 years before. So never give up. Okay, so next we have this acid line here, which is which I'm using to create more drive. So this is a real kind of like catchy loop, which is used for the build-ups, and it's also used in the bridge section and in the outro. So I have it rising and using that automation on the cutoff and creating that resonance is like creating anticipation, because you feel like it's building and building and building, and it's kind of like subconsciously telling the listener that something is coming. This is something which I really want to emphasize, is about using either effects or using certain textures and elements in your tracks to create anticipation. It can have a very lasting effect on the listener about when they tell you that a track is a banger. Sometimes it's from the things that they don't even know that they can hear. So I was asked if I used the TD3, the Behringer TD3 for this track. No, I didn't, because I didn't actually buy it until after I finished this one and moved over to the M1 Mac. So for this, I've only used Spire, but now I'm using TD3 as my textural acid backing, which is like two layers of the TD3 acid bouncing off each other, just sitting there within your sort of like mids, and that helps carry the track and make it sound more aggressive, just with those like floaty acids in the background. Next, I'm using layers of Nexus and Sylenth for the pads. I also have them automating up from the during the intro, so that's why you can't really hear it when it comes in, because I'm making them come in quite gentle, and then when you reach the breakdown, that's when they're in their full glory. So this is the first layer here, just to let you hear it. like your normal Anjuna beat style, smooth uplifting pad. And then I have another one which is an octave higher, which is kind of more phasing, more angelic sounding. And again, another one. Probably one too many, to be honest. One of the key elements, though, is this from the Nexus. This pad here, the Airwave Trans Super Saw. So this is more like, this is kind of gives you like a, makes you want to put your hands up in the air. It's kind of like so ethereal and glossy. So yeah, after that, you always use a sub pad to go with that. Whether it's putting it as part of your pads bus or having it as a separate thing is up to you. For me, I like to use this sub pad here, combined with the pads, creates a really nice dense texture. So that's just one layer, like a sub layer in Sylenth. And that really is a lifesaver when it comes to making your breakdowns sound big. Next, I've also layered in some backing choirs. So for the breakdown, especially when you can hear it, it's kind of like makes it quite heavenly. And to do that, I've taken the choir sample from Activa sample pack. I think one of the ambiences or something, and then looped that in the sampler to create. It gives you kind of like I think it was a Korg M1 style choir or something, like the kind of ambiences that you'd hear in Activa tracks. So you'd hear it in Jonas Stir tracks from 2005. Just putting it in there created more of a unique vibe. So you can really hear the three different parts. The pads, the sub pad, and the choir all together working well. So yeah. I also have a gated choir here, which is, I think it's from Nexus. Yep. And that is working just to create more energy. It's on 16th notes. If I play the breakdown from here, you can hear it all working together. Very nice. I feel like I'm going to say very nice quite a lot doing this. Honestly, I really love this track. When you love what you do, it makes it much more enjoyable, the working process. So I've got snares in the build-ups in the intro, and I've also got big snare build-up layer from Dave Parkinson. This is a Vengeance sample for the snare. I think I've got that filtering in. Yeah. yeah, that comes together. You know, I had a question on my Instagram about how I do my build-ups, and I don't overdo it. I think that's one of the things I should recommend if it's about how to do a build-up, is just don't overdo it, because people go to extreme lengths to make their build-ups as complicated as possible. And honestly, the most simple ones are the ones which work the best. See, and all you've got there is you've got the kick being filtered up with I think it's filtered in the low cut. Yeah. So all I've got here is the kick, then a low cut, and then volume automation down to -12, and then straight back up. And the mids, they're filtering in as well. Yeah. Just filtering in. Filter in your mids, build up your kicks with the volume automation and low cut, and have your snare rolls, filter out your choir, filter out your pads. On your main leads, which I'll break these down soon, but on the main leads, you want to use the low cut on them. It's all about stripping out that low end, so then when it comes back in, it's going to have a lot more impact. Some people also like to do volume automation on the master, which I will also recommend that you can do that, is to duck your master by 3 dB towards the drop. And then when that drop hits, it's going to have impact as well. Or you can use something like Endless Smile, which is a plugin that I like, Endless Smile. You can use that, or you can use flanger effect. But when it comes to the ingredients, don't overthink it, because you want your drop to be more powerful than the build-up. Okay. We've also got some Psy atmospheres here, which are from Futurephonic sample pack, and presets from Harmonic Rush for Psy length. There's also some reverse effects from Leviathan sample pack. Another Dave Parkinson effects fill. Really, there was no specific decision in what sounds I picked for this during the production of this record. Nowadays, I kind of know what I want to look at in terms of sample packs, like more psytrance based sample packs or more tech trance based sample packs. For this record, I was just throwing stuff together to get this idea down, and every decision that I made seemed to be the right one. But that depends on your workflow, whether you want to template something up and do that every time, or whether you want to just experiment. It's completely up to you. And those all sit in the background quite nicely. They're not too overwhelming. I didn't want it to be rich with psytrance sounds in this one, to be honest, because it felt like it was an authentic classic style uplifter. For the crash, I'm using an Activa sample, no EQ on there, and Ots Acoustic just for the reverb. That's it, just simple. I've got that reversed as well, same sample, just reversed it. Use that to transition into the next crash. On the effects, I've got Sub Drop from Dave Parkinson. I've also got Effects Kick, which is like an old Vengeance one, I think. Kind of stock sounding, but it does the job. For the other noise effects, I've got risers dotted around. So I've got some smaller risers for the like every 30-second transitions. So these work just to keep the energy going. And ones like this as well. And this one here. So on all of that group together, I think I've just cut out the lows and cut out some of the highs because this region here is going to be occupied by white noise. You don't want to have too much building up in this region because when you get to the final master, you don't want the high end, the top end to sound like a soup of white noise. You still want there to be some definition. So just cut where you don't think you're going to need. For the sweeps, there's a lot of white noise here, just because of techniques that I've learned over the years, either from working with friends on projects or learning from production courses about the samples that you should use. So for me, I always wanted to try and keep it quite stock when it comes to using white noise. I don't think, some guys like to design their own white noises on synthesizers, but I think there's plenty of samples out there that you can use. So there's the Kashmir Vengeance here. There's a Vengeance sweeps, big ones here on the bottom, and then these smaller ones up above. And they all work together to create a nice impactful white noise bus. So I've got that going to some reverb, and I've also got the EQ on that, cutting out the low end and a little bit of the high. As you can see, I've taken it off at 20 because our ears aren't going to hear anything above 20, especially not mine. And I also have a rise here, which is just a simple saw. Simple saw in the Sylenth. So you've got pitch bend on that, going up to 2 octaves, I think. Yeah, going up 2 octaves and using the auto filter to cut out the high end as it approaches the drop, because I really wanted to make everything kind of suck in and then go boom. Yeah. Now, what I do with all of my records, maybe for the past 3 years now, is to really create a character with the effects. in terms of something which alerts the listener to the track which is coming in. And for that, I'm using like laser sounds or sounds from movies. I really want to emphasize using this to people, because when you listen to your average trance track these days, it's really hard to tell them from each other. And if you listen to the classics back in the day, the 90s, the early 2000s, some of them had like unique sounds which would you'd remember about that track, even if it's not the melody. If it's like the sound effects, they can really. I mean, here's one for you: Delirium Silence Tiesto remix. Sure, everybody knows the vocal, everybody knows the breakdown, but some of those elements, like the clap, the bass line, the big rising sound, which was also used on Suburban Train, those samples, like, you know that the track is coming in when it hits, like that big whoosh up, you know, it's like, holy shit, it's coming, you know? So I want to try and like keep that characteristic in my tracks. So I have like an extra white noise. I also have this reverb kick, just small things there. But the real one to think about is this group here. So got this sample here from Vengeance. And I'm dotting that around, dotting that about the track. And I feel like that just creates some sort of like extra element of fun to the whole thing. I've also got this group of Activa samples, which are just like your signals for here's the drop. So rather than having like a Prida snare like the EDM guys would do, we'd have Activa fill and then whoosh into the drop. And I also have this sample here, which I think I've heard it on an Above and Beyond track, like their remix for Madonna, What It Feels Like to Be a Girl. What It Feels Like for a Girl, I think it's called. I also have this sample here. Just kind of like your flangering white noise. And I've also got this. So somebody said that it was like Blankenjoe Cream, that track from the 90s, early 2000s. Is it The Vision? What is it now? No, sorry, Blankenjoe's Cream. What am I talking about? Yeah, Blankenjoe's Cream. But actually, I think that this is a horror movie sound effect, because I heard it in The Hills Have Eyes. In one of the, I swear it was The Hills Have Eyes, in one of the scenes where there's like, they're walking and the camera kind of like, the focus cuts out of the camera to something else and you can hear that. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Comments. For adding just a little bit more character, I've got a sample here from a vocal pack. Can't remember what one it is. Lanikia Sounds. bliss, I guess. And that just seals the deal for me in terms of all the ingredients that go into creating a driving, simple trance track. Now, of course, the most important ingredient is this last one, which I'm going to cover, which is the main leads. So I will play you the melody now, and then I'll talk to you about the different parts. So yeah, here this is the melody which I thought of in the shower. When I came back from the shower, I just put the whole thing in and then built the whole track around this. The first layer here is kind of like the main body of the sound. And then it's also got these two backing layers. And this one here. Realistically, I could do away with these backing ones now. Looking at the project, I don't even think that they're making that much of a difference. But I still respect what the sound together has done. It's created this big super saw feeling, and of course, super saws are incredibly majestic. They're a very signature sound of trance music for a long, long time, for over 20 years. So getting the right super saw for the job has been something that I've worked on and worked with producers to find for a lot of my time producing trance music. So one of the questions that I do get asked is, how many layers are you using? So I'm using Zebra, Adam Sabo preset pack for Zebra. I'm also using Spire, and I'm also using Sylenth, and they're all going through their individual EQ. So take, for example, the Zebra, cutting the low, boosting the mids and the highs. For Spire, cutting the low, boosting the high. Just cut that top high because the Spire has a tendency to be a little bit like sizzly. And then for Sylenth, just cutting from the lows. As you can see, I'm not doing too much harsh EQ. You see many people do these big dips or gigantic boosts. I'm not doing that too much. For the backing, I think this is Zebra. Spire, Zebra, Sylenth. I think it's the same thing, actually. Yeah, it is. Oh, there's only one thing different. That's going through Mag EQ to add some high end, and the delay from Ableton Valhalla Supermassive, going through compressor in Ableton, and then EQ, and then EQ again. Looking at this just looks so messy. Then another layer, this one, Zebra and Sylenth. EQ, Mag EQ, some saturation, compression EQ, and going through the Supermassive again here in Mag EQ. And then they all go into this main leads here, which is being compressed by the Plugin Alliance Vertigo. With a bit of Mag EQ. I'm using the auto filters at the end of each section. So when you want it to fade out, you can bring down the cutoff automation on the synth, but also on your filter. And that just is a nice way to smoothly transition into the next section. I've got low cut and high cut coming together to meet in the center. And then lastly, the ELISA compressor, just to round it off, and that creates a lot more chunky feel. I think it's the combination of like downwards compression or upwards compression or something technical, which just makes it sound a lot more aggressive. And yeah, altogether, very nice super saw, which I've used on every track for the past maybe 2 years. Oh, and of course, what I've done is I've put it into an instrument rack in Ableton. And I just do this because it's easy to quickly drag and drop, and I've assigned the filter cutoffs to a macro, so then I don't have to spend time penciling in every single filter cutoff. I can just drag one and then it does the job for me. It also means that when I'm wanting to jam and just think of new ideas, I can highlight more minimalistically, more simply highlight the tracks that I want to use on the keyboard. So then I can get straight into my ideas rather than having to I'm trying to save time with what I'm doing. So yeah, having those instrument racks just means that I can quickly jam and get new ideas down. Okay, so lastly, before I close the video, I just want to talk about the idea again. So like I say, this this melody came to me when I wasn't forcing myself to produce, it was just when I was in the shower. And the loops that I selected were to create more character. The sub riff that I selected was to create more energy. The fifth synth that I'm using is to create more character. The chant sound is to create more character. The glassy pluck just served a purpose to drive the sound along in a more melodic way. The side pluck melody, that's to, it's catchy. It's also to complement the track itself. The Askew Stabs acid was to create more drive and groove. The main acid sound was to create more energy. The pads, these stock sounds, sub pad, stock sound. Choirs were to create more character. Snares for the build-ups. Psy atmosphere to create that background, atmosphere. Crash as stock sounds, effects as stock sounds. Extra effects are used to create more character. And you can see an ongoing theme here in what I'm saying is that when we're producing trance music, sure, there's a lot of general direction and a lot of typical ingredients that people use, which is fine. But if you want your tracks to stand out and you want people to remember them, it's important to have something in there that can be either sung or something in there that can make people do bass face, something in there that's got character. So that was the first thing that I really wanted to achieve with this, was after the strong melody, make sure that the rest of the track has a lot of character. Next was also about throwing away the rule book in terms of the structure of the record. So instead of it being intro, breakdown, drop, exit, I wanted to hark back to the 90s and early 2000s, where some trance tracks would actually have two breakdowns, or they'd have two drops, two main chorus sections. I haven't been seeing enough of that in trance music lately, maybe not for the last 10 years or even more. And I wanted to resurrect that. So as you can see with Centers, the melody comes in the first big breakdown. And then it goes away after the first drop. And then we have this part here, which is the bridge section. I'm really, really proud of this section, because this was the first time that I'd really tried to bring it back, take away the melodic elements and then bring them back. Believe me, when I watched Aline Fila play that at Transmission, and the crowd, and hearing the crowd reaction to that there, I even get shivers now. I've got shivers now talking about it. That made it just like, I was in complete disbelief. I thought, like, yeah, they get it. And that was just such a rewarding thing for people to get it. To understand the decision that I made on the dance floor, and why I did it to be like this. The double drop, bringing back the melody. So yeah, that's another thing which I want to emphasize is, the first thing is about character, making sure that the records have character. Then the second thing is about throwing away rule books. Don't be too generic in terms of like maybe chord structures or track arrangements, etc. Don't be too generic. And I think the third thing, as well as I want to say, is have fun. Have fun when you're making music, because this record was probably one of the most fun records that I've ever made. And I actually find it a pleasure to listen to this record. And I don't think I'll ever get bored of listening to it. And I'm very, very grateful to everyone for the comments. I'm very grateful to Ali and Fila for pushing this record. I'm really grateful to Transmission Festival for posting the clip on their channel and calling it like timeless. It's just, this is like a really important part of what I do, is making sure that the records that I make actually touch people in the heart and in the mind and the soul. So yeah, thank you everybody. This tutorial has either been, this walkthrough has either been great or it's been really shit. So just tell me in the comments and ask me any questions about the track. I'll be happy to answer them there. This is the first time that I've done something so extensively. My voice has gone because of this, but I really want to do this more and more, especially with the next releases. I've got another one coming up in a couple of months. Life in Trance is coming out on Pure Trance Neon in a couple of months. I will update you about that when the time comes. And I'm also wrapping up another track which is similar to Scent. In a few weeks that'll be finished. Yeah, anyway. So leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know what you think. If you have any other questions, like I say, just ask, because this video could have been great, it could have been shit, I don't really know. Take care everybody, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.